Of all the mornings I spent in the wild, the one where an elderly woman from the Passamaquoddy Nation told me her people had been meeting with forest giants for generations stands apart. At first, I assumed she was testing me, or perhaps trying to frighten me away from whatever was happening in those woods. But the things she revealed about these creatures, their existence, their territories, and their desperate need for secrecy would lead me into a confrontation that years of wilderness training had never prepared me for. My name is Maya Brennan, and for 14 years I worked as a backcountry survey technician for the Maine Forest Service. My job was a map of methodical tasks, taking me through thousands of acres of northern woodland. I mapped trail conditions, documented environmental changes, and flagged potential hazards for the public. It was precise, methodical work that matched my temperament perfectly. Measure the erosion, photograph the damage, file the report. There was no room for mystery, nothing supernatural. My world was one of pine trees, granite outcroppings, and the occasional moose that startled weekend campers. That all changed in September of 1994, when everything I believed about these forests shattered completely. It began on a Tuesday at the regional field office in Jackman, Maine, a small timber town near the Canadian border, where the forest stretched unbroken for miles in every direction. I had driven my service vehicle, a dark green 1991 Ford Ranger with the Maine Forest Service emblem painted on the door, expecting nothing more than another standard week of assessments. Instead, I found my supervisor, Helen Ridgway, standing outside her office with an expression I had never seen in my 12 years of working under her direction. "Maya, thank God you got here early," she said, her voice tight with an urgency that was entirely out of character. She gestured me inside. "Something strange is happening out on the Boundary Ridge Trail System, Sector 19, near that big stand of virgin spruce nobody ever goes to." I set down my thermos of black coffee and reached for my field notebook, the same spiral-bound pad I had used for years. "What kind of strange are we talking about, Helen?" "The volunteer trail maintenance crew walked off the job yesterday. Third time this week they've refused to finish their work out there." Helen pressed her palms against her desk and exhaled slowly, a long, frustrated sigh. "They keep saying the area feels wrong. Those are the exact words they keep using. Wrong." I raised an eyebrow. The volunteers who maintained trails in this region were mostly retired loggers and hunting guides, men and women who had spent their entire lives in these woods. They weren't easily spooked. Define wrong for me. That's the problem. They won't give me details. Susan Pelletier, the crew coordinator, just shakes her head and says they are not going back under any circumstances. Says the whole forest feels sick and there's damage out there that makes no sense. Helen unfolded a topographic map across her desk and tapped a circled area with her fingertip. "I need you to hike out there, conduct a proper survey, and give me some kind of rational explanation for whatever is scaring these people. I need documentation, Maya, something I can put in a file." "Probably just a bear marking territory," I suggested, my mind already cycling through logical possibilities. "Maybe an aggressive sow with cubs. September can be unpredictable with the feeding season coming on." "That's exactly what I told Susan. She said it's not bears." Helen leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the map. "Look, I don't believe in any of this haunted forest nonsense, but I need answers. If there's actual trail damage out there, we need to assess it and plan repairs before winter. If the volunteers are just suffering from some kind of group hysteria, I need to know that too." I was already running through my mental checklist of equipment. "When do you want me out there?" "Today, if possible. Pack for 4 days, maybe 5. The trail section in question is about 10 miles in from the Moose River trailhead. There's an old fire warden cabin foundation about 2 miles past the problem area. You can set up a base camp there if you need to." 3 hours later, I was loading my pack into the truck bed. My field kit was comprehensive but familiar. A four-season tent rated for the cold Maine nights. A sleeping bag good to 15 degrees, my compact camp stove with extra fuel canisters, water purification tablets, a complete first aid kit, compass, topographic maps covering 3 townships, all my measurement equipment, and my camera, a reliable Pentax K1000 with 8 rolls of Kodak film. I also packed my handheld radio, though I knew from experience that reception in the deep valleys and ridges of this region was unreliable at best. The drive to the Moose River trailhead took nearly 2 hours on increasingly deteriorated logging roads. My truck rattled over washboard gravel and lurched through potholes that hadn't seen maintenance since the previous autumn. I passed only one other vehicle the entire way, a battered pickup with Quebec plates, probably hunters scouting locations for the upcoming deer season. The trailhead parking area was empty when I arrived at noon. I spent 20 minutes organizing my pack, double-checking equipment, and studying the map. Sector 19 was marked clearly on my survey charts. A 7-mile stretch of trail that wound through stands of old-growth red spruce and balsam fir, following the ridgeline above the west branch of the Moose River. According to my records, the volunteer crew had been scheduled to clear blowdowns and repair drainage structures damaged by summer thunderstorms. I shouldered my pack, a familiar 50-pound weight, and began hiking. The first several miles were territory I knew well, a maintained trail with occasional views of the river valley below. The forest here had that ancient cathedral quality that old-growth timber possesses, massive trunks rising like pillars toward a canopy that filtered the afternoon sunlight into shifting patterns across the forest floor. Thick moss covered the granite boulders. Ferns carpeted the understory. Around mile 6, I began noticing changes. Nothing dramatic at first, just a subtle wrongness that I couldn't quite identify. The bird songs that had accompanied me since the trailhead had grown quiet. I hadn't seen any red squirrels or chipmunks in the last 45 minutes, which was highly unusual for this time of year when animals were frantically storing food for winter. The air itself seemed to press down with an invisible weight, a heavy stillness that had no logical meteorological reason. Then I reached Sector 19, and I understood immediately why the volunteer crew had refused to continue working. The damage was extensive and completely inexplicable. A red spruce, probably 90 feet tall and nearly 4 feet in diameter at the base, had been pushed over, not cut, not broken by wind, pushed. The root ball was still exposed, a massive tangle of dark earth and tangled roots ripped from the ground, but the trunk showed no signs of disease or decay that would explain a natural fall. The direction of the fall was perpendicular to the prevailing wind patterns. I had documented in this valley for years. 60 yards further along the trail, I found more damage. A massive granite boulder, easily weighing several hundred pounds, had been moved. I could see the depression in the moss where it had rested for decades, perhaps centuries. Something had lifted it and displaced it nearly 15 feet from its original position. The moss where it now sat was freshly crushed, still green, indicating the movement had occurred within the last week at most. I photographed everything methodically, taking detailed notes with compass bearings and precise measurements. My practical mind searched desperately for explanations. A landslide? No. The surrounding terrain was stable and showed no signs of mass movement. Heavy equipment. There were no vehicle tracks, no logging roads within miles, and this section was far too remote for any kind of mechanical access. An earthquake? I would have felt any seismic event significant enough to move boulders and topple healthy trees. The trail itself was torn up in several places, deep gouges in the earth that resembled claw marks, but were enormous, far larger than any black bear I had ever tracked. Each individual gouge was nearly 8 inches wide and at least 4 inches deep. They ran in parallel sets of 4, spaced about 6 inches apart. I was documenting a particularly disturbing disturbance. a section where the undergrowth had been completely flattened in a rough circle, perhaps 20 feet across. When a voice spoke from behind me, "You should not be here." I spun around, my hand instinctively reaching for the bear spray canister clipped to my hip. An elderly woman stood on the trail about 25 feet away. She wore practical hiking clothes, dark canvas pants, and a heavy wool sweater the color of autumn leaves, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity that seemed at odds with her weathered appearance. Her face was deeply lined, carved by countless seasons. Long grey hair hung in 2 braids that reached past her shoulders. She held a walking stick carved from birch, its surface worn smooth by years of use. "I'm Maya Brennan, Maine Forest Service," I said, relaxing slightly but remaining cautious. I hadn't heard her approach at all. "I'm conducting a damage assessment survey." "I know who you are," the woman replied. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly. "I am Sarah Running Deer. My people have walked these forests since before your ancestors crossed the ocean. I have been watching this area." I nodded respectfully. "I apologize if I'm intruding on tribal land. According to my maps, this is state forest. Your maps show boundaries your government made. They do not show the true boundaries." Sarah moved closer, her walking stick making soft sounds against the leaf litter. "The boundaries that matter here are older than your maps, much older." Despite my natural skepticism, something about her manner made me want to listen. "What boundaries are you talking about?" "There is a section of forest starting from that rocky outcrop." She pointed northeast with her stick toward a granite ridge visible through the trees. "It extends to the old beaver meadow near the headwaters of the brook you call Cold Stream. My people have an understanding with the ones who live there. We do not enter their territory without permission. In return, they leave our lands in peace." "The ones who live there?" I asked. "Are you talking about a family living off-grid? Hermits?" Sarah studied me with dark eyes that seemed to assess my very character. "No, not hermits, not humans at all." She paused. "Have you heard stories about forest giants? The ones some people call Sasquatch or Bigfoot?" I almost laughed, but the seriousness of her expression stopped me. "I've heard the stories. Campfire tales. Legend," I said carefully, not wanting to offend her. "Are you saying you believe those stories are real?" "I am not saying I believe anything. I'm telling you what is true." Sarah gestured at the destruction around us. "This damage was not caused by bears. It was not caused by storms. The forest people did this. They are warning you, warning everyone." Forest people. The phrase hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to politely thank this woman and continue my survey with rational explanations. But another part of me, the part that had noticed the unnatural silence and the impossible damage, was listening. "Why would they be warning us?" I asked. "What are they trying to say?" "That something is threatening them, something from your world." Sarah moved to the edge of the flattened vegetation. "When the forest people feel threatened, they react. They are peaceful beings mostly. They have survived for thousands of years by avoiding your kind. But they are also territorial. When something invades their lands, they push back." I looked at the toppled trees, the displaced boulders. "If you're telling me that an unknown species of primate caused this damage, I would need extraordinary evidence." "Evidence?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Your people always want evidence, measurements and photographs. But some truths do not fit in laboratories. Some truths require a different kind of seeing." She met my eyes directly. "I could show you, if you are willing. But it would mean trusting someone you have just met, and believing in something your training tells you is impossible." "Show me what exactly?" "The meeting place, where my people have communicated with the forest giants for many generations. Tonight is a significant night in our calendar, a night when we renew our agreements. She paused. If you come, you may see things that will change how you understand these forests. Or you may see nothing, and you will go back to your office and write your reports about bear damage. I stood there in the fading afternoon light, my rational mind at war with my curiosity. Everything about this situation was wrong, but the evidence around me was undeniable. Something had caused this destruction, something powerful. "What time tonight?" I asked. "Midnight." Sarah smiled slightly. "Come to the granite outcrop on the ridge when the moon is directly overhead. Bring a tobacco offering if you have any. It shows respect. And Maya," she added, her voice growing serious, "bring nothing else. No flashlight, no camera. The forest people will not reveal themselves to anyone carrying devices of your modern world." I nodded, though my practical side rebelled at the thought of leaving my camera behind. "I will find you," Sarah said, turning and walking back down the trail, her footsteps somehow almost silent. "Just be at the outcrop when the moon reaches its peak, and be prepared to have your understanding of the world completely transformed." I watched her disappear, then stood alone in the damaged clearing, trying to process what had just happened. Either I had just agreed to a midnight meeting with a possibly unstable woman, or I had taken the first step toward discovering something that science said could not exist. I continued my survey for another hour, the pattern of destruction consistent. Pushed over trees, displaced rocks, deep gouges in the earth. By late afternoon, I reached the old fire warden cabin foundation and set up my tent. As I ate a simple dinner by a small fire, the feeling of being watched, which had settled on me since I entered Sector 19, intensified. Sleep was impossible. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves seemed amplified. Around 11, I gave up, reluctantly leaving my flashlight and camera in the tent. I kept only my compass, my bear spray, and a small pouch of pipe tobacco I carried for ceremonial purposes. The moon was nearly full, providing enough light to navigate. I found the faint game trail leading to the granite outcrop and walked slowly, letting my eyes adjust. The outcrop was a dramatic jumble of house-sized boulders deposited by glaciers thousands of years ago. Sarah was already there, sitting on a flat rock, her walking stick across her knees. She nodded as I approached, and I sat on a nearby boulder to wait in silence. For 15 minutes, nothing happened. The moon climbed toward its zenith. I was beginning to wonder if this was all an elaborate test when Sarah finally spoke, her voice a low whisper. "They are coming. Do not be afraid. Whatever you do, do not run." From the darkness beyond the outcrop, something moved. My brain insisted it was a bear on its hind legs, but as the figure stepped into a patch of moonlight, I realized no bear could look like this. It was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and covered with dense, dark hair. Its face was not quite human, but not quite animal either. A heavy brow ridge shadowed deep-set eyes that gleamed with reflected moonlight. It moved with a fluid, silent grace that seemed impossible for its size. Behind it came 2 more figures, one smaller, the other roughly the same size but with lighter, brown-colored hair. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but Sarah's calm demeanor held me in place. The first creature stopped 30 feet away and made a deep vocalization that resonated in my chest like an organ's bass notes. Sarah rose slowly and made a sound in response. She knelt and placed a bundle of dried plants and a small tool on a flat rock. The large creature approached the offering, sniffed it, and made another, more approving sound. It tucked the plants into its thick hair, then turned its attention to me. I felt the weight of those eyes, like a physical pressure. There was intelligence there, calculation, judgment. I was being assessed. "Stand up slowly," Sarah whispered. "Take out the tobacco. Place it on the rock. Move slowly." My hands were shaking as I rose and forced myself to move forward. The creature watched my every motion. I placed a handful of loose tobacco on the stone and slowly backed away. It came forward, sniffed the tobacco and made a sound of satisfaction. It looked at me again, and for a moment our eyes met. What I saw was not animal blankness. I saw sorrow, deep, ancient sorrow mixed with wariness, suspicion, and something that might have been hope. This was not a mindless beast. It was thinking, feeling, understanding. The creature made another sound, directed at Sarah. They exchanged a series of vocalizations that clearly carried meaning. After a minute, the creature turned and walked back toward the darkness, the other two following. They vanished as silently as they had appeared. Sarah exhaled slowly and turned to face me. "Now you know," she said simply. "The forest people are real. They have been here for longer than my people can remember. And now they are in danger." "What are they?" I found my voice with difficulty. Sarah shook her head. "My people call them Kiwakwu, the forest giants. What matters is that they exist. They are intelligent, and something is threatening their survival." "The damage I documented," I said, my mind struggling to reorganize itself. "That was them." "Yes. They have been agitated for months now. Something is happening in the deep forest, in the areas they consider most sacred. They are trying to warn us. Why trust humans at all? Because we have proven ourselves over many generations. My grandmother met with them, her grandmother before her. We have always kept their secret." I sat down heavily on a boulder. "You said something is threatening them. What?" "That is what I need your help to understand," Sarah said. "You work for the Forest Service. You have access to information I do not. Maps, records, permits. Something is happening in the deep forest that is driving the Kiwakwu out of their homes. I need you to help me find out what." I thought for a moment. "I can't exactly put forest giants in my official reports." "No, you must never mention them to anyone." Sarah's voice was sharp. "Their only protection is remaining a myth." "Then how am I supposed to help?" "By looking for human causes for their disturbance, illegal logging, mining, development. Find the human cause, and we can address it through human channels." I kept seeing those eyes, that ancient sorrow, that desperate hope. "I'll do what I can," I said finally, "but I need to know where the disturbance is happening." "Return in 3 days," Sarah said. "Same place, same time. I will try to bring them." 2 nights ago, there was an explosion in the deep forest. They are very frightened now. I hiked out the next morning and drove back to the office. I gave Helen my report. "Bear activity," I said, the lie feeling heavy in my mouth. "An unusual concentration of black bears. The damage is consistent with territorial marking. I recommend closing the section to public access until late October." Helen accepted it without question. For the next 3 days, I threw myself into research, pulling every permit application for the region. On the second day, I found it. A company called Northern Range Resource Assessment had filed for a mineral exploration permit in an area about 15 miles northwest of Sector 19. The company was a front for mineral prospecting, using broad research permits to survey for valuable deposits. But soil sampling shouldn't cause explosions. On the third day, I hiked back to the granite outcrop. Sarah was waiting with 2 other women, her nieces. "The situation is more urgent," she said, confirming my fears about the explosions. The giants came as before, 4 of them this time. After a long exchange between Sarah and the large male, she turned to me. "They will show us, but only you and me." I followed Sarah and the 2 largest figures into the deep woods. They moved with astonishing speed through trackless terrain. After what felt like an hour, we emerged into a small meadow. In the center was a crater, 20 feet across, blasted into the earth. The surrounding vegetation was burned and flattened. Scattered around were wire fragments and a tattered canvas bag bearing the logo of Northern Range Resource Assessment. I had no camera, but I memorized every detail. The large male made a sound, and Sarah translated. They have found 4 sites like this. The explosions come without warning. The first one, it killed one of their young, a female caught in the blast. My stomach turned. They were using explosives for seismic testing, a highly illegal practice in a designated wilderness area without the proper permits. The large male looked at me, his eyes pleading. He is asking if you can stop this, Sarah translated. I work for the state, I said carefully. But this activity is illegal. The environmental damage alone, destruction of wilderness, potential water contamination is enough. I can get their permits revoked. I won't have to mention them. I looked at the giant. Tell him I will do everything in my power, Sarah translated. The male studied me, then reached out with one massive hand and touched my shoulder. A brief, gentle contact that conveyed trust, hope, and a desperate plea. The next several weeks were a blur. I filed detailed reports on the explosion sites, framing them as discoveries made during extended backcountry surveys. I documented Northern Range's permit violations and contacted the regional EPA office. The bureaucratic process was frustratingly slow, but eventually a team of federal investigators confirmed my findings. Northern Range was ordered to cease all operations. Their permits were revoked, and federal prosecutors filed charges against the company. The explosions stopped. One evening in late October, Sarah called me at the office. The forest people have returned to their traditional territory, she said, her voice warm with relief. The large male asked me to tell you that you are now part of the agreement. As long as you keep their secret, they will keep watch over you in return. I continued my work for another 12 years, always maintaining contact with Sarah and her nieces, a quiet guardian of a secret world. Sometimes on solo surveys, I would feel that sensation of being watched and know I was not alone. They never showed themselves, but I knew they were there, my unlikely allies. After Sarah passed away in 2003, I saw her nieces at her funeral. From the forest beyond the burial ground, I heard a deep, mournful vocalization. They had come to pay their respects. For the rest of my career, I kept a small, carved wooden figure on my desk that had arrived one day in an unmarked package. It depicted a human woman and a towering, hair-covered figure standing side by side, its hand resting gently on her shoulder. A promise kept, a secret protected. I had learned that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, but to be guarded. The greatest discovery was not revealing a truth to the world, but becoming a keeper of that truth, ensuring that beings who had chosen silence could continue to live in peace.